Hello, Banksy class. I'm going to say good morning because here it is the morning, but you might be listening to this in the evening, in the afternoon. I don't know. You may. Hopefully you've made chance to listen to it, and I hope you've been enjoying them. Now, today's little story is called Where Shall We Nest? So, what do you think? Already make a prediction. What living thing could be in this story? Are there any birds that make nests? We'll find out. Once upon a time, all the birds had a meeting. The big rook took the topmost bough and began the talking. Caw, caw! This meeting is held to find out which would be the best place for us to nest in this year. Last year, so many boys and girls found our nests and eggs, and alas, some of them were took. So we must try to find safer places to build in, said the Freckland thrush. Safe places, safer places. Tirri-lee, said the red robin, his bold black eyes looking all around. The very best places to build in are old kettles or saucepans or old boats in a ditch. Do you know that, Robin's very true? Blackbirds also do that. So, quick short story, going off on a tangent slightly. The old school I used to work in the summer holidays when no one was in, so there was a big shelf in our reception area, and we put all outdoor toys in there, and there was like a tennis racket. There was this big scoop thing. You might have seen them before. You get them for dogs as well. It was plastic. You can throw balls with them. You can launch them. It's got a nice little cup. Blackbirds, amazing nest makers, had got sticks, twigs, grass, mud, and they'd made a beautiful solid nest in this plastic cup shape. It was so solid we could actually take the nest out, and we had it in the classroom for the children to look at when they came back to school. But they do nest pretty much anywhere. They don't necessarily nest up in the trees. So this was on a shelf, so it was lower, but obviously because none of the children were in, they didn't get disturbed. It was quite quiet for them. So if you have a garden and you have a quiet part of your garden, and it doesn't have to be high up, you might see really might be low down, might be in a bush, you might find birds nesting, but don't touch them. If you see a nest, it's really important that you don't touch it. You're not allowed, for one, and you run the risk of, if you touch it, you make that nest smell of you like a human, and then the bird comes back, and especially if she's got eggs, if she smells a human, she won't necessarily go back to that nest. She won't sit on her eggs. And sometimes the eggs can die, the chicks can die. So it's really important, if you see a nest, you just look, you don't touch. Tangent over. I'll continue with the story. Anything that has belonged to a man is nice to build in. See? So, that goes back to the cupped things we had at school. Saucepans, things like that, just what like the robin has said. Very clever birds. I don't think so, said the blue tit. But you are so friendly to man, aren't you, Robin? You are not afraid of him as we are. No kettles for me. I always think some sort of a hole is the safest place. Again, he's right. Robins can become quite tame. Robins come close to your windows, close within the garden. Well, you built in somebody's letterbox last year, said the thrush. That belonged to man, didn't it? Well, it was a nice hole, said the blue tit. I chose it because it was a hole, not because it had anything to do with man. Holes in trees are best, said the great tit. The woodpecker nodded, his red splashed head. Yes, holes are good, he said. There aren't enough holes, said the starling. It's all very well for the woodpecker to talk. He can always make holes by drumming his beak into the wood. We can't. I think the very best place is just under the eaves of a house, said the little house martin. It's cosy there, and the eaves protect the nest. The eaves are, so if you look at roofs, they normally go into an apex like this. Under this part here, there'll be some little slats. These are the eaves of the house, and you'll often see little birds flying in them and get in under the roof. Very clever again, very clever. Now I've lost my page, look, because I keep talking. Stop talking, Mrs. Fish. I found it. What? build a nest so near to people, said the rook. Caw-caw. You must be mad. Don't the rough boys come and tear down your nests? I like to build in the topmost branches of the highest of trees, right away from man. Well, you sometimes spoil his corn for him, said the robin, so he likes to shoot you, and you have to get far away from him when you build. If the summer is going to be fine with few storms, we like to build our nests high in the topmost boughs, said the rook. But if the summer is going to be stormy, we build in the lower ones. We too are very clever. Yes, that is clever, said the blackbird. High-built nests would be torn away by the wind during a storm. You are wise, rook, but all the same I say that the best place for a nest is somewhere close hidden in a tree like the oak or the chestnut, or in a close-set hedge. Too easily found, said the big girl, soaring around. If you take my advice, you will build somewhere on high cliffs, where it is difficult for people to get to your nests. We don't all live by the sea, said the moorhen. If you will let me say a word, I advise everyone to find a nice quiet pond, go to some rushes and build a nest in there. You can easily bend down the rushes and make some sort of platform. Then when you leave your nest, you can bend the rushes over to hide your nest again. A good idea, said the jackdaw, but I should be afraid if my little ones would fall into the water. It's all right for you, moorhen, because you can swim, but jackdaws can't. You build in strange places, said the kingfisher, looking at the big jackdaw. Who else would choose a church tower of all places? Why, it must take you ages and ages to build a nest there, because you have to fill it up with sticks. Well, you would want to build a nest. Who would want to build a nest just like you, tucked into a long hole in the bank, said the jackdaw. Nasty and dark and smelly. No, thank you. The sand martin builds in holes in banks too, said the kingfisher. And it's a very good idea, isn't it, Mr. Sand Martin? Very good, said the little brown sand martin. We sand martins like to build our nests all together. I build mine in a sandy bank of an old quarry. I make a hole in it, then I lay my eggs. End of story. Well, supposing the rain came and soaked down the sandbank and got into your hole, said the starling, your babies would drown. No, they wouldn't, said the sand martin at once. I make my hole slant upwards, so any water always runs out and down. That's a very good idea, said the starling. Well, has anyone else anything more to say? We still haven't decided what is the best place to build our nest. Everyone said what they had thought, but they couldn't agree. Those that built in holes meant to go on to build in holes. Those that built in trees would not change. So they began to talk about what the best things were to build for. Sorry, I'm going to read that sentence again. So they began to talk about what were the best things to use in the building of a nest. Maybe we can choose something that no one will notice, said the rook. I think big twigs are the best, like camouflage. Oh no, said the blue tit. I should hate a nest made of big twigs. Moss and root fibres and feathers, that's the sort of thing you want. The blue tit obviously prefers a little bit more luxury. Soft padding with feathers. I prefer a mud nest, said the house martin firmly. And the barn swallow nodded too. Mud makes a fine firm nest. It must be difficult to make, said the lark in surprise. I don't bother much about making a wonderful nest. The print of a horse's foot in a field is a good enough place for me to nest in, and just a few bits of grass. Wow, that's crazy, isn't it? To think that a bird would nest in a footprint of a horse and just put a few bits of grass. A little bit dangerous, might get trodden on. Obviously works for them. Mud makes a wonderful nest, said the house martin. You fly down to a puddle and take some mud in your beak like this and mix a bit of straw with it, but nobody wanted to hear. The kingfisher had begun to talk loudly. Kee, 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 listen to me. I make a very fine nest and all I use is fish bones. Fish bones? Said the birds in surprise. How strange. Don't they just smell horrid? Yes, they do, but we don't notice it, said the kingfisher. You see, my mate and I can catch plenty of fish, and we use the old bones for a nest, putting them in a pile. They make a fine nest, really they do. And we know this already, don't we, from one of our previous stories. Well, we don't all want to catch fish in order to make a nasty smelly nest, said the thrush rather rudely. I like a nice firm nest made of small twigs, roots, moss and things like that. And I like a mud lining. So do I, said the blackbird, but I do like a nice soft lining on top of the mud. I can never understand why you don't put one on, Thrush. No need to, said the thrush. No need to, no need to, no need to. I always think it is best to make my nest of something near at hand, said the robin. For instance, I usually build my nest somewhere near the ground, where there are plenty of dead leaves lying about. Very well, if I use dead leaves amongst other dead leaves. Quite good, said the chaffinch, thinking of her own neat and pretty little nest. Linings are very important for a nest. I always think so too. I like a soft, warm lining for my eggs. Warmth is a good thing for those eggs. Oh, I think so, yes. I think so too, said the long-tailed tit eagerly. You should feel how warm my nest is. When it's finished, I use feathers inside it. Hundreds of them. Really, hundreds of them. Well, it isn't everyone that can spare the time to go hunting for hundreds of feathers, as you can, said the robin. I shouldn't be surprised if you put over 1,000 feathers inside your ball of a nest. It must be so hot inside there. I wonder if your eggs aren't cooked. There was a silence. All the birds looked at one another, for they were longing to fly off and begin to make their own nests, but nothing at all had been decided. Well, said the rook at last, shall we all build high up in the trees, as I do? No, in holes, cried the tits and the starlings and the woodpeckers and the kingfishers and the sand martins. No, on the ground, called the larks and the plovers and the robins. No, in the barns, cried the barn swallows. We always build in barns. No, under the eaves, cried the house martins. There was a great noise of twittering and singing, and no one really could make out what was being said. A big bird suddenly flew down, cocked his head on one side, and said, "Cuckoo, cuckoo!" "Oh, you didn't come to the meeting," cried the birds. "You haven't said what you think. What is the best place to nest, Cuckoo, and what are the best things to use for a nest?" "The best place to nest is nowhere," cried the cuckoo, "and the best thing to use are nothing. I never make a nest." "I use yours. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Fancy asking me." He flew off, and so did everyone else. And if you look and see this year, you will find that each bird has chosen the place that he thinks is best, and is using what he likes the most to build his nest. It's really fun to watch them, and they are so busy at work. So go to your garden, if you have one, or when you go for a walk, and see if you can see the little birds collecting all the different things that they have for their nest. They might be sticks, it might be mud, it might be grass, it might be feathers. They're all different. But the cuckoo, he won't build one. He just uses the old ones of the nests that were built for him. He's a lazy bird. Or is he just super clever? You make up your own mind. Thanks for listening.